James Mangold and Kathleen Kennedy are now reported to have written out Marion, the character, Indiana Jones' longtime love interest and wife. They wrote her out of the script is what we are being told, and then scrambled to bring her back to save the film for the ending. We've got information. It's a source that's telling us they actually know high-level details about this and what went down. We'll discuss it. Some of it's corroborated already in an article that's come out. All right, folks, welcome back to another fantastic day here on the WDW Pro channel. It is such a joy to get to share our understanding of entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we attempt to do each and every day right here on the channel. If you like content like that, you might consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe. And when you click it, you stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. Joining me to discuss this situation and the source that I have, we have Culture Casino, Mexican Iron Man, and Jonas J. Campbell, the investigative reporter for ThatParkPlace.com. Gentlemen, welcome back yet again.
Thanks for having me.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having me, sir.
So the way we're going to handle this, folks, is we are going to read the article first, parts of it, and then I'm going to discuss what I have heard from this source. I'm going to be very careful in how I describe it because we do not want to give the source away. Also, because this is a source telling us their view of reality and potentially what they've seen, what they've heard, what they've been a part of. We cannot independently verify someone else's own subjective experience. There's no way to do that. So as we do this, please note that for the source at least, that this is based on rumor and speculation simply because it's something they're telling us, not something that we can say to you in a factual way. Oh, this 100% absolutely occurred. But make of that what you will. The article we have that corroborates what we've been told over the past weeks, let's say, by this source is out of Variety by Adam B. Very. As an inside the Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny surprise cameo. And then it says, I was profoundly happy, talking about Karen Allen. However, that is not what I am hearing from the source, that she was happy. I'm hearing that it was anything but, except that she is a very, very positive and nice lady, even in real life. We're going to talk about that. Here we go. The article says, when Lucasfilm announced in 2016 that Steven Spielberg was making a fifth Indiana Jones movie with Harrison Ford, fans naturally wondered how much of a role Karen Allen's Marion Ravenwood, Indy's Spitfire equal from 1981's Raiders of the Lost Ark and the love of his life, would play in the new film. The last time audiences saw Marion, she was getting married to Indy at the end of 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, after she revealed to Indy that they'd had a child together who Indy meets as a teenage greaser. That's Mutt. So any follow-up movie would at the very least need to address the fact that Indy is married now. That's certainly what Allen was thinking at least. And she says, I don't know that I thought we'd pick up from where we left off, but I did always imagine that it would be a story with Indy and Marion going forward, she tells Variety. And as we go into this article, folks, you're going to see that there was more than just her conjecture that would occur. There was actually planning that indicated this would happen. That's not quite how things turned out. After 3 years of development, Spielberg decided to turn over directing duties to James Mangold. That's also part of this framing that this article is doing to make everything seem as better as it possibly can. And folks, I believe it is to try to fix the huge error where James Mangold has been caught in what we assume to be a lie, where they did in fact reshoot the ending and Harrison Ford accidentally let the cat out of the bag. Now, James Mangold did not take over directing duties from Spielberg. Spielberg said he'd had enough. He headed out. And Mangold overhauled the script with screenwriters Jez and John Henry Butterworth for what became Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny. According to Allen, Marion was largely cut out of the movie. Instead, the couple had separated after Mutt was killed in the Vietnam War. It's only at the end of the film, following Indy's time-bending adventures with his goddaughter, that Indy and Marion have a tender reunion. Now, here's where this gets interesting. It says here, Lucasfilm first announced they were making a fifth Indiana Jones movie in 2016. Did you have a sense that you'd be coming back at some point? I want to skip ahead. We go down here to this point right here. When Steven was going to direct the film, I think the scripts were more focused on an Indy Marion story. But when Steven stepped aside and James came in, he started fresh with new writers, and they just went in the direction they went in. They were going to tell a different story. That's not to say that I had ever read a script that Stephen was working on, because I hadn't. But I just knew from conversations that we'd had that the ongoing story had involved Marion in a much bigger way than the story that they ended up with. All right, so let's talk about that for a moment, gentlemen, because here's what my source is claiming.
Wow.
Source I have says that Marion and Indy were together for this adventure again in the Spielberg scripts that were put together, and that when James Mangold came in, that he was heavily influenced by Kathleen Kennedy to drop Marion and to switch to a younger woman who would be able to essentially act as the new lead, and then have Harrison Ford play the part of a broken kind of Indiana Jones. And now, in all fairness, I'm also told that Harrison Ford was keen on that because he wanted to have a more hefty role in terms of pushing his acting abilities with Indiana Jones. He did not want to play the same Indy for a fifth time. Guys, how bad of a mistake was it for them to jettison Marion? And by the way, we'll talk about that ending in just a moment. How bad of a decision was it for them to jettison her in favor of Phoebe Waller Bridge?
Well, I'd say it depends on what their objective was. If their objective was to make Phoebe Waller Bridge look better, then yes, having Karen Allen on screen next to Phoebe Waller Bridge is not a good idea if you're trying to push Phoebe Waller Bridge.
That's a great point. Culture, do you think that the destruction of Indiana Jones' happy ending from the Crystal Skull, which is one of the only positive parts of that film, do you feel that that automatically created resentment in audiences as they began this journey for the fifth time?
Well, I think it did that both in fact for the people who saw the film, and then, post, review and revelation that was the situation via word of mouth and reviews. I think it affected substantially the bottom line. I mean, ultimately, whether or not something's a good idea or not always is, on the scoreboard is what did it earn at the theater, at the box office. And I mean, many of us have been calling this a flop from, day one. And, financially it was. So ultimately the decision-making process there is called into question because of just how uninteresting and how depressing this film is. I mean, it would have been a lot more joyful to watch those two people that had finally been together, kind of meander their way through an adventure together and listen to them bicker as they always did. That's part of the charm of the films. Other than the prequel film where we were introduced to a different character that the audience didn't really appreciate. In the very final film, the only good thing, as you mentioned, was that the happy ending, and at the end of the day, and the spoilers, everybody, why did you have to redo the happy ending? You already had one. It should have just been a continuation of that situation. There wasn't a lot of sense there. So I hope I answered.
There seems to be a focus out of Lucasfilm to break these heroes, and in ways that it just makes no sense, right? So Luke Skywalker should not be a broken person. He should be triumphant when he comes into The Last Jedi. That's not the case. Han Solo should be someone who is leading with his wife, and instead he's reverted back to being a smuggler. And in the case of this situation, Mike, we have an Indiana Jones who should be one of the most renowned professors and archaeologists in the world. Instead, he is banging on doors of apartments with a baseball bat in his underwear. Mike, this goes right along with what we've been hearing about Kathleen Kennedy and how she views these kinds of characters. Is it any surprise that she got rid of Marion to put in a self-insert?
This is such disappointing news. I mean, first of all, hats off and kudos to your source for confirming what's long been withheld, long been discussed, but withheld from Lucasfilm in terms of the details of what happened with this movie. I think Mangold is an incredibly disingenuous person, and my kudos to you and your source for coming forward. That ending at the end, there's several things that come out, and I'm responding to this cold. I did not know where we were going to go with this taping. And I'm kind of having a bit of an emotional reaction right now, because what I'm realizing here is that not only did they kill off the reputation, past, present, and future for Indy If you see this film, that is what's going to happen to you, just like Jake Skywalker, exactly like you said, Pro. But they also killed, but they also took out Marion. But in the end, they needed her back, because we know from the interview that he did, that Harrison Ford did, that he says, yeah, we came back and reshot the ending, and he was very happy with how it ended up. So that fully supports that there were reshoots. And guess what? In the end, we needed to bring her back anyways, in order to get that Fifi's, that, you know, the feelings, the emotion, that, you know, that they were searching for, that they weren't able to get by the rest of the film that they shot. Now, as I was listening to Culture Talk, my mind just started to work, and I was thinking, you know what this company is afraid to do? This company is afraid to make a movie that appeals to family. You know what I would have done? What I would have done, building on what a couple things that Culture said, is I would have brought Harrison and Marion back, let them bicker, let them be the old sages, the respected professor, her, the wise, intelligent, grounded, strong woman that sees and perceives things that sometimes Indy doesn't. And maybe I would have brought Shia LaBeouf back, or someone else could have played Mutt. And then he's got a new female character who is likable, unlike Phoebe Waller Bridge. And there is some kind of adventure where they as a family move forward through some kind of amazing storyline. And there would have been an appeal to a next generation of people, you know, maybe that 35 to 50 demographic, maybe even the sub 35 demographic. And they tell a family story that the whole family wants to go and watch. So whether you're in the audience and you're between 60 and 80 and you've loved Indy for 40 years, or maybe you're the grandson of someone and you go in with your grandpop or your pop to the movies, you can have that feeling of that beautiful family experience of being in the theater and having that next generation enjoy it, and having maybe some relatable characters on screen and a story that tells a family story. But Pro, we don't get that with Disney. We're not getting a company that's willing to tell. All they know is divorce. And by the way, a divorce in 1969, highly statistically unusual. And all they know,
especially in older ages.
Absolutely, sir. And in fact, Pro, all this company seems to know how to do is kill people off, denigrates people's reputation, and they know divorce. That's all they know. Broken families. It just baffles me how a company that built its legacy in the first 100 years on family entertainment cannot tell a story that, according to the box office, Pro, no families in America didn't want to see this on the 4th of July.
Well, that's true. And by the way, we'll have a video out this afternoon, if you're watching this video at the time of release, talking about The Sound of Freedom, the film that actually defeated Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny on Independence Day. But before we get there, I'm ready to disclose what this source has told me was the actual main original ending, although apparently there were two different endings which were prepared, and then neither of those was used. They went to scrambling to bring in the Marion character. But here's what I was told was the main ending, which cost quite a bit of money to make, and then was jettisoned after executives at Burbank saw the film and became deeply concerned, although I don't think that their concerns were fully alleviated. But essentially what happens, and I'm going to not use too many specifics because I don't want to get the source in trouble. I don't know how many people know about this or how many worked on it, so we'll be a little careful here. But basically what happened in the original ending that they were going to use, before we know that Harrison Ford said they did a little work on the ending, right, folks? So what was the ending like before that? Well, it was this, according to the source. Indiana Jones was going to be lying on the grass with Archimedes there, and apologies on these spoilers, although they never happened, but he was going to convince Phoebe Waller Bridge to leave him there and save Teddy and the others, go back through time. They could not take him with them, and he would give her his hat, tell her that it's time for her adventures, yada, yada, yada. She and Teddy and the other gentlemen that are there then attempt to escape through a very significant action sequence, and they go through the time rift, and then you find that she, after going back to the original date, that she would actually have learned her lesson in the final scene, where she is no longer out to simply make money off of these artifacts, but instead she is working to get them to museums where they belong. And then there was going to be a second appearance where, after that fades out. Indiana Jones is back with Archimedes in the past, and it turns out that he had a clever plan the entire time. And that was that he tells Archimedes that he will explain the Dial of Destiny to him and tell him all kinds of secrets if only he will write one special message on there. And he has him do so in a language that Indy knows. The message is something to the effect of, tell her you love her and tell him he'll die if he goes to war. And then it was going to go, for the very last scene, to Indy when he takes the Dial of Destiny from Basil, I believe is his name, the character who was brought to the movie, right?
Toby
the
Jones.
Father of Phoebe. Yes. So it goes to where Indy takes the Dial of Destiny away from him when he's supposed to destroy it, and then he sees that message in the language that he understands, and he gets kind of wide-eyed and shocked, and then that was going to be the end of the film. It left the audience hanging as to whether or not he was successful in saving his marriage and saving Mutt based on the message that was sent. And I am told that the execs were very displeased with it because it did not show that he died for any real purpose. It just did not go over well at all. And so that was jettisoned, and you can imagine why. I mean, it doesn't sound very good. But that is jettisoned at the last minute to bring in Karen Allen. She comes in, she gets a giant wig. She gets a giant wig that does not look, it just doesn't look realistic at all. She is not able to be de-aged like Harrison Ford is, and they shoot an expensive ending. And then the CGI artists, I'm told, again, folks, this is a bit of a rumor, but I'm told they were given 10 weeks to get everything looking good and de-age Harrison Ford like he had been in the rest of the movie, and it was all very hastily done. So, given all of that, we'll read the article in just a moment, but let me just hand it to you guys and get your thoughts. It sounds to me like this ending was sort of in that same vein as what Doomcock was reporting for a long time about what it's going to be.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because,
but it also sounds worse somehow to me.
The ending that was reported on Overlord DVD was that at that point, Phoebe Waller Bridge left and returned all of Indiana Jones's artifacts back to their original locations.
Well, now that could have been the second ending that we're talking about. You know, they had two apparently in the can. I don't know if they shot all of that. Don't know anything about that one. But this other one doesn't sound too far off either, where she learns her lesson. And it also, you remember the scene in the movie where they're on the boat and she asks Indy if he could go back and do anything, what would he do? And he says, I would tell my son, not to go because he's going to die, yada, yada. Apparently that storyline was going to be closed with this other ending. The problem was execs just absolutely hated it. So guys, what are your thoughts on that?
I'll go first. Man, wow. So basically, this movie was a ship without a rudder. It was sailing the high seas of it doesn't know what it should be or where it should go. I can tell you, I had a very weird feeling the last 15-20 minutes of that movie, especially when that final scene popped up, because everything seemed to happen out of nowhere. Once we went through that time, whatever you want to call it, portal thing in the sky, and they start that sequence, that almost seems like a mini movie in and of itself. But the way it literally seems like it was hijacked. The whole movie seems hijacked. In fact, it does look different. It feels different. In fact, that scene that ends up at the back of his apartment doesn't feel and look like the same scene that the movie opens with.
Well, so, that I think, Mike, that's because they were in such a rush to try to make it look and feel the same way. His apartment is supposed to be set, back in the 60s, and it's highly, highly stylized.
Yeah.
They were on a short timeline there. Mike, it's not shocking to me when this person tells me this, because you would think that there would be some sort of action sequence where they're trying to fly the plane back through the time rift as it's closing and barely making it and all of that. Instead, this ending's so weird. She knocks him out and boom, we're back in his apartment, and it's the most lackluster thing you've ever seen.
Exactly. It it goes black and then it comes back and fades. I hate to say this, but fade in, fade out is now not more than a Kathleen Kennedy way to open up one of her videos on Disney Plus. I mean, it seems to be the whole movie. The fade in, fade out. It was there. It was there nonstop. This is highly disappointing. I think going back to what I was saying earlier, this company needs to find soul and conviction. It has to find the soul of what people really want in America today, and it has to have the conviction to tell the stories that we want to see, whatever those stories might be. If someone would have told me that Indiana Jones, that the next iteration, with a $300 to $350 million production budget, and Lord knows how much in advertising, would not cross 100 to 120 million in its opening weekend on a 4th of July holiday weekend when families are doing, guess what? Family stuff. This movie had every advantage, in particular because 4th of July this year fell on, guess what, everybody? A Tuesday. I mean, you could have gone to see this movie on Tuesday. You could have gone on Monday. You could have gone on Sunday. You could have gone on Saturday. You could have gone on, frankly, it previewed Wednesday of last week. This movie had every opportunity to tell a family story right. I feel awful for Karen Allen. I think she's great. When you talk about strong, independent women characters in cinematic history, she absolutely is in the top 10 list.
Amazing character.
Certainly in the top 20. But I would say definitely top 10 in her own unique way. She didn't need special effects. She did it purely on her acting ability. Shame on Mangold. Shame on Disney. Shame on Lucasfilm. Shame on Kathleen Kennedy for not embracing the character of Marion for this film, because Marion could have carried the day. And in the end, what did we see? We had to bring her back and have her at the end in order to evoke the emotion that this soulless movie lacked.
Well, you're right, Mike. And, I saw it the same way and exactly felt the same beat for beat experience that you had, because the only emotional connection you have with this film is the one scene that you described on the boat, or maybe perhaps it was but the scene on the boat where that just, it seemed like all of a sudden they let the audience into an emotional moment. And then at the very end, but here's the thing, Mike, and this doesn't surprise me to hear. That there's no structure, that there's no plan, because we're continuing. That's a constant thread throughout all of the Disney nameplates. Now, every single studio that they own and operate, they have no plan. They really didn't have a plan for Multiverse of Madness. That's coming out. You've seen that recently revealed, and the fact that they had nothing to go off of. It's been exposed in the mainstream media that the budget overrun, the cost overrun that's been reported on here and in many other places for the Multiverse of Madness. But that was all because they had no plan. And then at the same time, to discard the work that had been done by Steven Spielberg, right? This is a person who understands what's going on here, and his team had worked on, the development of this, and then it got all tossed aside in 2019. And you know what, to me, because of his not so much love affair with Kathleen Kennedy, I'm not surprised he stepped away from the project. I don't think any of us
Culture, is it any shock then? The famous clip now where Spielberg talks about the people who are credited with making Indiana Jones, be manifest. Yeah. And he purposefully skips Kathleen Kennedy. He makes no mention of Mangold. I think there may be a little bit of a tiff there. What do you think?
Well, I think that's the case. And before I was a little bit more on the fence, but with this information and with everything else that was going on in the background, I think we have a lot more context to view that with in retrospect. Who were the main people that made all of these films happen? Well, it certainly wasn't this lady. And again, he's famous for describing her participation in things in a very unflattering way, let's say. So, a lot of people use that clip, but again, structure, not surprised. Spielberg stepping away and not wanting no part of this, anti-indie story that was put together, which is very anti-family. And I'll let Jonah speak on that. But ultimately, Mike's right. This is, and I've been saying it for years now, maybe not emphatically enough, that Disney is no longer a family company. They don't even know. And Mike's right. They're soulless. They've abandoned their core principles, their core values, which again, core principles, core values, those are what you're supposed to operate on, not just in life, but any company that you start. You need to know who it is that you're serving, and you need to serve them well. And Disney has not served the family unit for a very, very long time.
Well, that all of that is true. Let's read the last part of this article that I think is important to know, and then we'll get some final thoughts on this. Out of the same article that we read earlier, it says, so when you learned that the new script had Indy and Marion separated, very much on the way to divorce, and also that Mutt had been killed in Vietnam, what was your reaction? Karen Allen says, well, I was disappointed, of course. I knew that there had been talk that they did not want to go forward with Shia, so I knew that something in the story had to create the potential for him to not be there in a way that made sense. By the way, folks, he could have just moved. That would have been enough. I didn't know that he was going to die in Vietnam until I read the script. Oh gosh, it was maybe 6 months before they were going to start shooting. I was deeply happy that Marion came back at least the end of their story. If this is indeed truly the last film of this particular group of films, if this is the last story with Harrison as Indy and me as Marion, I was profoundly happy that it didn't end with them coming back together. That meant a lot to me to feel like they were going to ride off in the sunset together. And here's the key part that we find out what this scramble was like. It says, how many days did you shoot for? I think I was shooting for 2 days. And remember, folks, Harrison Ford came out and said that they redid the ending. She's in the ending. It's the only place she's in. So we know this was the very last 2 days of shooting. It's because it's the last thing that Harrison Ford did. She says, but they wanted me to come out early and have plenty of time to play with the costume designer. We had decided to put me in a gray wig that had been built for me, but James and I hadn't seen it. Oh, that sounds great. And again, this speaks to the scramble that we're talking about that my source had told me. I've been telling Jonas bits and pieces of what the source has told me, but we didn't have this article to really go to. But listen, if you're going to shoot for 2 days, and you're putting somebody in a wig and you have never even had them wear it in the first place, you're in a hurry. She says, so I came about 2 weeks early. It was nice because I hung out on the set a bit and got to watch them shooting and got to meet everyone. You know, Phoebe was there, John Rhys Davies, Harrison, and that lovely young man, Ethan. It just gave me a chance to move back into that world a little bit without jumping onto the set to shoot. This was quick. Now, you know, she says she's there for 2 weeks, but folks, let me tell you something. The deal here is, if that wig doesn't work, 2 weeks does not give you enough time to get a replacement for a custom-made wig. They take forever to make. This was a rapid decision. This was something they did very hurriedly. I'm hearing that they filmed this thing in January. This was quick. So, guys, last thoughts on this one.
That combination of people were not on set together, but for one scene in the entire film. John Rhys Davies.
That's correct.
And Phoebe Waller Bridge. I'm not sure that they have any scenes together other than that last one, especially not with the magic kid.
I think Karen Allen is being very kind. Is that fair to say, Jonas?
Oh, absolutely. And she's been a class act through her entire career. The thing that I want to say here is they all seem to be taking for granted the great female heroes and the great female characters that George Lucas created over the years. Princess Leia is a strong woman who don't need no man, but guess what? She happened to fall in love along the way. Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood. She's running a bar in Morocco. She's holding her own against these crowds of men, and she knows how to fight for
Jonas,
herself.
they can't acknowledge that. They can't acknowledge it because if they do, then they don't get to claim that they're the first to ever do it again.
Right, because she's lovely and she's fierce at the same time. And they don't know how those two things go together because they have a disdain for actual femininity that they don't want to admit to. But they dislike actual women and women who do it well. They dislike that so much. And what is the peak level of femininity? Being a mother. I know that there are people who would hear that and want to spit.
No, Jonas, you're exactly right. I've never thought of this before. You're exactly right. Kathleen Kennedy has taken two of the greatest moms in the history of cinema. Marion, you know, she has a child with Indy. Princess Leia, she has a son with Han Solo. She took both of those moms and she killed their children.
And she made them, and then they made them into horrible mothers. I'll also add
what a fantastic point.
The peak of masculinity is fatherhood. So just in case anybody misunderstands what I'm saying here, I'm not saying women need to stay in the kitchen. I'm saying women need to stay in the kitchen and men need to provide all the things for that to happen. Serve your wife as to the Lord. That's all I'm going to say on that. I do not understand how this company tries so hard to ape the traditions of the past, but misses them entirely. Having something to fight for is so critical to a good story. And instead, I'm gonna take a dump here on the rise of Palpatine. Their image of family is a bunch of people who are fighting against a common enemy. No, a family is a family. We all know what a family is. And you can say, oh, I'm a Skywalker. Okay, well, we haven't seen anything on screen that actually indicates you're a Skywalker. We see an indication that that you were around these people a bunch. And, oh, these people that happened to be on this adventure, they were all here together. Disney and Lucasfilm and these people have no idea how an actual family operates. And so they don't know what you mean when you say family.
I want to go to culture next. I'm going to save Mike for the end because I know this is a particularly passionate moment for Mike. So culture, take the next one, and we'll hand it over to Mike.
The fact that everything was so rushed, I mean, and it's declaratively stated here, and that we know for a fact just how slapdash the last few days of shooting was in this particular situation. The fact that we've been misled by the director himself on what was actually happening in the
culture. Why did he feel the need to do that? Why did he even have to step in and start calling people liars and mocking them when they were right? Well,
largely probably because he needed to save the film. But I don't have an answer for you, Pro. First of all, I thought a lot higher of this man as a director for the projects that he was able to deliver. When I ultimately saw what was on the screen for this particular film, I realized why they brought him in. They wanted to destroy this man, this character, this hero. And that's what he's good at. He's good at deconstructing and making things sad and dour and depressing, and he's all about the end of things. That's not necessarily what the audience is looking for in a film. So he had to come out and essentially say, no, this is going to be great, and Indy's not going to be replaced, and yada, yada. When we knew all along, especially after it was announced later on, which, subverted his argument, that they were planning a series with Phoebe Waller Bridge. So
that's right.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, you've been caught in a lie, and now you need to come out mea culpa. He refused to do so. And then everything became about protecting him and his reputation, which again, none of this was, again, pulled together properly. That wasn't beginning to end of ever since this film left Spielberg's hands. Sounds like it was a bad circumstance. I'm not going to use Valiant's words for that terminology, but I will, because we're a little kinder here. But I will say that I'm just not surprised, and it's really sad for Karen Allen. I mean, let's just be clear. I mean, she is, as you said, a character that need not be forgotten. Her importance and the weight of her character in pop culture, but Lucasfilm in particular has been doing that, as you mentioned, with a lot of strong females, but they're not the only one. It's just Disney's the most egregious because they have been the most, or had been the most traditional storyteller that we'd ever had for a very long period of time. I mean, for my lifetime and for my mother's lifetime and beyond.
Mike, culture brings up a fantastic point. We now know that there was a desire to make a series about Phoebe Waller Bridge's character, Helena. We now know that character essentially replaced Marion when James Mangold came in. It seems to me that Kathleen Kennedy's insert of Helena, the character that is Indiana Jones' goddaughter, that she comes in, and Karen Allen's Marion Ravenwood and Indiana Jones' marriage and happy ending is the casualty. What do you make of it?
Well, I'm building on what Jonas and Culture said in terms of what they've done to the Marion character. This company doesn't understand families. When I go to the movies lately, I'm looking for great stories that are good for me and my son. I want there to be good. I want there to be a good masculine role models. And when I think of a good masculine role model, I'm not thinking of just a shoot 'em up movie where you've got a tough guy fighting an alien or something like that. I'm talking where a man is a true responsible masculine man, and that means having healthy relationships, being a family man, being a good dad. It bums me out that in this movie that I just saw the other day, that I have to look at, and I get it. Harrison Ford wants to play Indy Jones like in a different way. Actors are often like this, but for me, looking for a cinematic experience, what bums me out is that when that movie ended, vis-a-vis Marion, right off the bat, whatever, it was all on him. He's broken, and then the scene at the end I just found so insulting. That last line where she says at the fridge, "Are you back, Indy?" Like, what does that mean?
Right. She was the one who's supposed to be depressed, Mike.
I thought she was the one that went into a manic depression and the marriage ended because of her. But no, why, how could it possibly be, white, brunette chick's fault for any reason? So Marion wouldn't have said that. There's no way that she would have said that to him. There's no way this would have happened. But what do we get? We get Marion disrespected. And when I look at Harrison Ford's portrayal of Indiana Jones in this movie, whoever did it, Mangold did it, Mangold's writers did it, Kathleen Kennedy did it. I've got a guy who, from where I sit, is a bad hero, not a great dad, because I would have stopped my kid from going, or I would not have been in a situation where my kid had decided he had to go to war to piss me off. Anyway, a bad dad, bad hero, bad husband. In fact, a guy who feels bad about himself in every shape and form.
Well, who doesn't love seeing a sad sack and a failure on screen?
It's the way to go out for a nice popcorn flick.
Because
well,
the inference of the fridge. I'm sorry, one more thing, Pros. The inference on the screen at the fridge is that, "Are you back, Indy?" Really, what that line means is that she left because something that he did. And now that
I think that's terrible writing, Mike. I don't think they could keep track of what the script had said in the past. That's how bad it is.
I was so angry and depressed, Pro, that I couldn't even tape a reaction video from my car. I was gonna do one just for whoever wanted it, whether it's Midnight's Edge or another channel, and I just couldn't do it. It literally sucked my spirit out from me. And Culture saw the movie before I did, so I had a chance to see his reaction. And I was wondering, what could make Culture Casino? Because I know Culture. I know you, bro. And you're one of the most optimistic, nice guys I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, what could make Culture feel that way? And then what happened? I watched the movie and I felt that way too.
Yeah.
Paulie's the same out of Latino Slant. Always positive and had the same reaction. Well, but that's what we're seeing now at the box office. This is what happens when you make people feel this way when they come out of the film. The word of mouth is gone and there is no audience to be had. Gentlemen, we end on sort of a dour note, but we'll have much more positivity coming. We've got the afternoon video, which will be about the new faith-based film, which is exploding in theaters, beating Indy on its Independence Day that should have been huge. And then, of course, we've got the Pro Show later today. If you're watching this video at the time of release, the Pro Show live, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You are not going to want to miss that as we cover all the latest. And who knows, maybe we'll have some more information about the emergency meetings taking place in Burbank with Lucasfilm. Jonas, where can people find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there?
You can find me at the Pro Show. You can find me on Twitter at Jonas J. Campbell. I've got a series called Everything Woke, where we go through some of the family deconstructive things, among other concepts that they're trying to put into kids' media of popular culture. And also, I'm an investigative reporter for That Park Place. So if you want to find any of that, start on Twitter. So thank you very much for having me on.
There you go. And Mike, are you a YouTuber yet?
No, good Lord, no. But I am part of the team over at Midnight's Edge After Dark and Midnight's Edge with Andre and Tom. So check us out over there, Midnight's Edge After Dark and Midnight's Edge in the morning. And
Culture, where can we not find you is a better question.
I don't know. I've been told to make myself scarce, but you can find me here.
Please don't, Culture. Please don't. No. We love having you on.
I'm blessed and very privileged to hang out with wonderful people like Mike and Midnight's Edge team and everybody else, including yourself, Pro, and of course Jonas and everybody here at WDW Pro, and a few things that might show up on That Park Place, which I don't know why you would let me do anything over there. But you can also find me at my own channel. Let's see, on Rumble, Odyssey, Minds, Twitter, and of course YouTube primarily. And I just want to say thanks to everybody. I've been very grateful for being able to do this. So thanks for having me.
Well, gentlemen, a pleasure to have each and every one of you on. And to all of you who have watched, a pleasure to have all of you. Unlike Lucasfilm, we appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your time. And when you entrust us with it, we take care to take care of it. Folks, the conversation here is over, but the commentary begins. Drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. Make sure to check out the Pro Show, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursdays, every single Thursday. We never miss a one. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.